Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, 77a of Maseches Kiddushin. We're starting from the very top of the page where we have a new Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Bas Chalal Zachar Pesula Min HaKahuna Le'olam. The daughter of a male Chalal is Psula, is disqualified from marrying a Kohen and from eating Truma, from Kahuna, forever, meaning every generation. In other words, we're being very specific, as we'll see as the Mishnah continues. We have here the daughter of a Chalal Zachar. How do you have a Chalal Zachar, a male Chalal? So that would be if a Kohen were to marry a divorcee, let's say a Gerusha, which is forbidden to him, so the son would be a Chalal. If that son has a daughter, it sounds like even if the mother was not a Chalal, that son who's a Chalal married a regular Yisraelis, their children, their daughter in this case, would be a Chalala and would be Psula Min HaKahuna. She wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen, she wouldn't be able to eat from Truma. But Yisrael Shenasa Chalala. But let's say she, being a Chalala, let's say either this girl that we're talking about, or you go up a generation, go back to the Kohen married a Gerusha, married a divorcee, they had a daughter. The daughter is a Chalala. If she marries a Yisrael, which she's allowed to, she just can't marry a Kohen, but she can marry a Yisrael, so then, Bito Ksheira L'Kahuna. So then their offspring, their daughter, is kosher for Kahuna, is not a Chalala. So basically the children of a Chalal, of a male Chalal, are Chalalim, sons or daughters, but the children of a Chalala, of a female Chalal, they are not Chalalim. Then the Mishnah continues, Chalal Shenasa Bas Yisrael. If a Chalal, a male Chalal, married a Bas Yisrael, a regular Jewish Yisraelis, Bito Psula L'Kahuna, the daughter is disqualified from Kuna, which is actually just a repeat of the first halacha that we taught, and the Gemara is going to ask why the Mishnah repeats itself. But again, that's the case that we spoke about where the father was a Chalal. I mean, the son, he was that you have, again, a Kohen marries a Grusha, a divorcee, their son is a Chalal. That Chalal now has children, so those children are going to be Chalalim. Rabbi Yehuda says, Bas Ger Zachar, Kibas Chalal Zachar. The daughter of a male Ger is like the daughter of a male Chalal. In other words, just like the daughter of a Chalal is a Chalala, it continues on as the same status and can't marry a Kohen. So too, the daughter of a ger, of a male ger, has the status of a ger, of a convert. Even if the mother is Yisraelis, is born a Jew, is not a convert, as Rabbi Yehuda holds, as long as the father is a convert, so then the daughter has the status of a convert, and that would render her unable to marry a Kohen. But that's only if the father is a ger. If the mother was a gioris, was a convert, but the father was a born Jew, then that status would not pass on to the child. And the Gemara will get into this later. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Yisrael shenasa gioris, bito ksheir lekahuna. That if a Yisrael marries a gioris, the daughter is kosher for kahuna. The daughter does not have the status of gioris, which agrees with what we just said. But the ger shenasa bas Yisrael. But he argues in this point. He says a male ger who marries a bas Yisrael, bito ksher kahuna. The daughter is kosher kahuna. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov argues in the case where the father's a ger, the mother is born a Jew. What's the status of the child? The first opinion, Rabbi Yehuda said the child has the status of if they would have a daughter, she would have the status of gioris, of a convert, and she couldn't marry a Kohen. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov disagrees and holds that no, the daughter would be kshera even to marry a Kohen. Aval, however, ger shenasa giores, but if you have a male convert marry a female convert, there he agrees, bito psula laguna, that the daughter would maintain the status of a convert, even though she didn't. She was born a Jew, but she has the status of a gioris, and she would not be able to marry a Kohen. Echad, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Echad ger ve'echad avodim mishuchrarim. Whether we're dealing with a convert or we're dealing with freed slaves who are also have the status of converts, afilu ad yud doros, even up to 10 generations, they have the status of gerim, of converts, ad shete imo mi Yisrael, until you have a scenario where the mother was born Jewish. As long as you have gerim marrying each other, so then the children will have the status of gerim until you have where one of them didn't marry a convert but married the mother who was born Jewish. And what seems to emerge from this is, even if you have a scenario where the mother was a convert and the father was born Jewish, the child would still carry on this lineage of being a convert, and I guess we have to contrast that with the previous line of the Mishnah, which was that if the father was a ger, sorry, not the father, if the going back, Yisrael shnasa gioris, Yisrael married if the father married a convert, right? So then we said the daughter is kosher. That agrees with what we just said. But then we said if the father is a ger and he marries going back. If the father is a Yisrael and marries a gioris, so then Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov had said the daughter is kosher lekahuna. Now we're saying though that that until you have a mother who's born a Yisrael, they continue the status of being gerim. So we'll have to see how this, when we get to the Gemara that deals with this, if this is a contradiction or not, how it's resolved. And then finally we have the Mishnah concludes, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Af Gersh Nasa Gyoris Bito Ksher Guna. Rabbi Yossi says even if a convert marries a female convert, a male convert marries a female convert, the children, the offspring, are completely kosher and are kosher likahuna, are allowed to marry kohanim. Okay, so today's Gemara is not really going to deal with the converts. We're going to deal today with the first half of the Mishnah, which is the chalalim, those who are disqualified from kahuna. So, so the first thing the Mishnah said was that a bas halal zachar, the daughter of a male halal, so you have a male who was born from a Kohen's illicit marriage, that son is a halal, he then has a daughter. The Mishnah said that she is psula min kahuna le'olam. She's forever disqualified from kahuna. The Gemara asks, "Mai le'olam?" What do we mean forever? So, what might I have said? Midi dahava mitri va'adomi, that we treat chalalim the same way we treat Egyptian and Edomite converts. That mala halan la'achar shlosha doros. Just like there, after 3 generations, they become permitted to marry. Afkan nami la'achar shlosha doros. Also, chalalim, we might have thought that after 3 generations they should be permitted, or at the 3rd generation, kamash malan. That's like the Mishnah said olam. So when it comes to a Mitzri convert and an Edomite convert, the Torah says that even after they convert, they're not allowed to marry regular Jews until you have a 3rd generation of converts. The 3rd generation, they're allowed of Edomite and Egyptian converts, they're allowed to marry regular born Jews. So you might have thought the same is true with chalalim, that chalalim, the 1st generation, they can't marry a Kohen, and the 2nd generation can't marry a Kohen, but maybe the 3rd generation they could. Comes the Mishnah and says, no, le'olam, forever, they're forbidden as long as they still have that status of halal, which is following the lineage of the father. If the father is a halal, then the children are halalim, and if they again, if the children of the son, right? If you have a father is a halal and he has a son, so that son's a halal, his children will for sure be halalim. If he has a daughter, so then it depends who she marries. If she marries a halal, then the children will be halalim. But if she marries a Yisrael, so that's the next clause of the Mishnah. It said that halala who marries a Yisrael, a regular Jew, the children are not halalim; they're kasher l'kahuna. So that's the next step of the Gemara. Yisrael shnasa halala. If Yisrael marries a halala, the children are if they have a daughter, she's not a halala, she's allowed to marry a Kohen. So the Gemara asks me, Nahani mili. From where do I know this? What's the source for this? So Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon, so I'm changing it to Rabbi Yishmael. Namar kan, it says here, V'lo yichalel zaro be'amav. So it says with regards to, I believe this pasuk is about a Kohen Gadol, if I'm not mistaken, marrying a widow. It says he shall not profane his offspring amongst his nation. V'nemar lahalan, and then later it says with regard to the laws regarding Kohanim not becoming tamei, it says lo yitamei baal be'amav, that a Kohen, here it calls him a baal, a chieftain, a head, should not become tamei amongst his nation. So we have that we have lo yichalel zaro be'amav, that one should not profane their offspring amongst their nation. We have one should not become tamei amongst his nation. So Mala Halan Zacharim, just like the halacha of not becoming tamei only applies to Kohanim, only to male Kohanim. Only male Kohanim are forbidden from becoming tamei, except for to their close relatives. So, and that's learned from a drasha, because it says, I think it says Bnei Aharon, the sons of Aaron, and we understand just the sons, not the daughters. So, Ma'ala Halan, Zachar V'lo Nekevos, just like when it comes to the prohibition of not becoming tamei, it's specifically the males, not the females. Afkan Zacharim V'lo Nekevos, also, when it comes to this idea of profaning the offspring, Be'amav, it's only the males that become profaned and not the females. The females don't become profaned. That's what, at least it seems to be saying. So Elameata, so if the females don't become profane, they don't become chalalim, bito shel kohen gadol tishtri, then the daughter of a kohen gadol should be permitted. Right, we're saying that the daughter of an illicit kohen relationship, she's a chalala, but now we're saying, we just learned out that this whole thing doesn't apply to women, it's only the men. So why are we saying that the daughter of a kohen gadol who marries a widow, or of a kohen who marries a grusha, a divorcee, that the daughter will be a chalala? We're saying it doesn't apply to the girls. So the Gemara says no, because miksiv bino, does it say v'lo yichalel bino, he shouldn't profane his son? No, zaro ksiv. It says his offspring, v'lo yichalel zaro be'amav. You should not profane his offspring, implying that if he does marry if a kohen gadol marries a widow, he profanes the offspring, not just the males, but also the females, not just the sons, but also the daughters. So what were we learning from So what is it that I learned from the pasuk that said that it applies to the males, not the females? So it must be for the grandchildren. The granddaughters don't become chalalim. So that's what we had, right? If we have the daughter, if we have a chalala, so we said, let's say a kohen gadol marries an almana, marries a widow. So we said it says it implies that his offspring becomes chalalim. So that's the males and the females. So the daughters become chalalim. But on the other hand, we said that this whole thing is only by the males, not the females. But we know the daughter becomes chalalim. So who doesn't become chalalim? Must be the granddaughters. The granddaughters don't become chalalim. So the Gemara asks, so Elameata, it says Bas Beno Tishtri. So then, if it's the granddaughters, so then all the granddaughters should be fine. But the way that we set it up in the Mishnah was only the daughters of the daughters are not halalim, but the daughters of the sons are halalim. Why? Bas binot. The daughters of the sons shouldn't be halalim, because we're saying the girls don't become halalim, and we're applying that to the granddaughters. So we say, no, because ksiv, because it says lo yichalel zaro, he should not profane his offspring, and makish zaro lo. So we make a hekesh, we compare his offspring to him. Because the way Rashi explains it is, Zaro is like talking about both him and his offspring. His offspring means him and his offspring. So, are at least mentioned in the same word. So that teaches us to compare him and his offspring. Mahu, just like him, just like the guy himself who engaged in the illicit marriage, the Kohen Gadol who married the widow, or the regular Kohen who married a divorcee. So just like him, Bito Psula, we learned that his daughter does become disqualified, does become Psula, does become a Chalala, because it says Zaro, his offspring. So Af Bino, so the same applies for his offspring's offspring. His son's offspring, because it says Zaro, his offspring, implying that he's similar to his offspring. So just like he makes his daughter into Chalala, so his son makes his daughter into a Chalala. So then, the Gemara, so Bas Bito Titzer. So then, why just his son, also his daughter? If we're saying his offspring is compared to him, that just like he makes his daughter into a Chalala, so to his offspring makes their daughters into Chalalim. So then, just like we're saying his son makes his son's daughter into an offspring, so his daughter should make his daughter's daughter into an offspring, into a Chalala. So why are we saying that the daughter's daughter is not a Chalala? So the Gemara says, because Im King, Gzeir Shava, Maya Hanile. Because if that was the case, then what's the Gzeir Shava for that we start with? We start with the Gzeir Shava that said that just like the laws of Tumah only apply to males, so to the laws of Chalalim only applies to males. But then we kind of moved away from that, because we said, but it says Zaro, his offspring, implying even the females. And then we said, and also Zaro, his offspring, implies that just like he disqualifies his daughter, so too his offspring disqualifies their daughter. So that's his son's daughter. So we said that should include his daughter's daughter too. His daughter's daughter should also be disqualified. Should be a Chalala. But then what was the Gzeira Shava for? That said it's only the men, not the female, not the women. So that's what we're left with. We're left with that from that Gzeira Shava. Where is it that we say it's only the males, not the females? It's the children of the daughter, the children of a Chalala. That the daughters of a Chalala would not be Chalalim. Okay. Okay, the Gemara continues and it says, Chalal shenasa bas Yisrael bito psula. If you have a Chalal, a male Chalal, so he's let's say the son of a forbidden relationship that a Kohen had, he's a Chalal, and he marries a Bas Yisrael, a regular Jewish girl, which is permitted. Bito Psula. Their daughter is Psula, is a Chalala. Because if the father's a Chalala, the daughter's a Chalala. The Gemara asks, Hatana le Reisha. That was already taught in the Reisha. That was the first clause. This is the third clause in the Mishnah. But that was already taught in the first clause. The first clause said, Bas Chalal Zachar, the daughter of a male Chalal, Psula minakuna le'olam, is always forbidden from kuna. That's the same thing we just said. We just said, over here in the third clause, a Chalal, a male Chalal who marries a Jewish girl, the daughter is pasul. That's the same thing as the daughter of a male Chalal is pasul. So it just repeated itself. So the Gemara says, yes, it is repetitious, it's redundant. Why did we say it? Aidi detana reisha yisrael shnasa Chalala. Because once we were teaching the middle case here, which was where a Yisrael married a Chalala, Taranami Seifa Chalal Shnasa Bas Yisrael. So it gave the flip side case, even though it was repetitious, of a Chalal, a male Chalal who married a Bas Yisrael. So the middle case there was not repetitious. The middle case was where you had a Yisrael, a male Yisrael, not Chalal, who married a chalala, so there we said the daughter is not a chalala, because she's the daughter of a chalala is not a chalala. So once we were saying that, once we said if a Yisrael marries a chalala, so we repeated the flip side of a Yisraelis who marries a halal. A male halal marries a regular Jewish girl. Okay, now the Gemara tells us Masnisin delok Rebbe Dostai ben Yehuda. This Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe Dostai ben Yehuda. We've had Rebbe Dostai in the past. D'Tanya, we're learning a brisa. Rabbi Dostai ben Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Dostai ben Yehuda says, Kishem shebnei Yisrael mikvah tayra lechalalos. Just like Jewish men, bnei Yisrael men, are like a purifying mikvah for chalalos. In other words, we learned that if you have a chalala, and as long as she marries a regular Yisrael, the children are not chalalim. It's like the husband is a mikvah. He's like a purifying pool. So just like Rabbi Dostai says, just like a Yisrael is like a purifying mikvah for chalalos, that the children will not be chalalim anymore. Kach binos Yisrael mikvah tayr lechalalim. So too, binos Yisrael, Jewish girls, are like a mikvah for chalalim, for male halals. So Rabbi Dostai holds that if they the Mishnah said that the children of a halal of a male halal are going to be halalim, even if he marries a Yisraelis. Rabbi Dostai is saying no. If he marries a Yisraelis, she's like a mikvah tara. The children are not halalim. My time at Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yehuda. What is his reasoning? Where did he get this from? Because Amar Kra, because the pasuk says lo yichavel zaro be'amav. He should not profane the offspring within his nation. And that implies be'am echad hu demechal, that he only would profane his offspring if it was am echad, if it was one nation. But b'shnei amamim eino mechal, but if it was two nations, he does not profane them. In other words, by nation in this case we mean they're both halalim. If they're of one nation and they're both halalim, that's where he profanes the offspring. If this pasuk actually, I think is about a Kohen marrying a halal, I think. So a Kohen can't marry a halala, but it's and he profanes the offspring, but it's only when they're of the same. Now I guess we kind of have to qualify this. If he's actually a Kohen, so then it's a big problem because he has a prohibition. If he is a Yisrael, that's what we're saying it's okay. And not only is it okay, that the children won't be halalim. As long as it's not am echad, as long as the parents are not both halalim, not of the same type, the same nation, same type, so then the offspring will not be halalim. It's only when they're of the same type, so that's when the children will be halalim. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Dostai ben Yehuda, that it's only if both the father and the mother are halalim that the children will be halalim. Again, just to step back a step, how do you get a father and a mother halalim? So if you have a Kohen who marries a divorcee, his children, even though he's not a halal, his children will be halalim. And it's that's who we're talking about, those children. So if you have two Kohanim, two families, two Kohanim married divorcees, they each, one had a son, one had a daughter, one's a halal, if they would marry, their children would be halalim. But according to Rabbi Dostai, if either the halal or the halal would go and marry a regular Yisrael or Yisraelis, the children would be purified, they're like a mikvah, and they would not be halalim. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Lo yichalel zaro. The pasuk says he should not profane his offspring. Ainli ela zaro. I only know that if a Kohen marries a Kohen, an almana, that he profanes the offspring. Hi atzma minayin. How do we know that he actually profanes her? just going to grab a chumash just to double check that I'm teaching this correctly in terms of this pasuk. I'm going back and forth on this. This pasuk is in Vayikra Chaf Aleph Tesvav, where it says, okay, so it's talking about a Kohen Gadol, and it says, Almano grusha b'chala zonas elo lo yikach. He cannot take a widow or a grusha divorcee or a chalala as a wife, or a zona, someone who had a forbidden relationship, and he should only take a basula, a virgin, and then it says v'lo yichalel zaro b'amav. He should not profane his offspring. So it's really talking about all these things. A Kohen Gadol who would marry any of these people that's forbidden from him, and the same would be true for a grusha, for a regular Kohen who marries a divorcee or a chalala or somebody forbidden to him. So he's mechalel zaro. He profanes his offspring. So Engli elazaro. I only know that he profanes his offspring. He asks, how do I know that he profanes the woman herself? How do I know the wife becomes a chalala and she would not be allowed to eat truma, for example, and would not be able to marry a Kohen if, let's say, this husband died? So how do I know that? So Amar Kal V'chomer. The Gemara says we can make a Kal V'chomer, we can deduce it logically. Mazaro, if the offspring, Shalo Avar Avera, that didn't do anything wrong, Mischalel, yet we say the offspring is disqualified, becomes Chalalim. He, Sha'avar Avera, this woman who was involved in an Avera, who transgressed, it was forbidden for her to marry this Kohen, and she did it anyways. Eino din she'mischalel. Shouldn't we say all the more so that she becomes a chalala? So we can deduce it logically that if the offspring become chalala, they didn't do anything wrong, all the more so she should become a chalala since she did something wrong. Now the Gemara says, but that doesn't work, because hu atzmo yochiach. The Kohen can refute that such a kal v'chomer, because we know it doesn't apply to him, because the Kohen sha'avar avera vein mischalal. The Kohen also did an avera, but he doesn't become a halal through this avera, and it's possible. It's possible for him to go back to doing avoda, to serving. He has to do a certain level of tshuva. He has to. Rashi quotes he has to take an oath that he's not going to have benefit from this woman, but he could go. It's possible for him. He doesn't become a halal. So you see that this logic doesn't work. If there was such a logic, then you should say if the children who didn't do anything wrong become halal, all the more so he should. But we don't say that. We know he doesn't become a halal. So we clearly don't make such a logical jump or deduction. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a refutation, because malahu shekain ein mischalo b'chol makom, because there's no situation where he would become a halal. You can't turn a male into a halal in any situation once he's already born, unless he was born a halal. Tomar bahi shemischalales b'kol makom. As opposed to the woman, it's certainly possible for her to become a halala in other situations. Meaning, it's not necessarily exactly a halala, but a zona. Right? There's things that could disqualify her. So a woman is clearly different than the Kohen. The Kohen cannot become disqualified from serving. He could get a blemish, but I guess we mean through some kind of halachic act that would disqualify him. He can't, and a woman could. So we could go back to our kal v'chomer and apply it just to the woman, since if the children could become halalim, so all the more so. And they didn't do anything wrong, all the more so the woman who did something wrong and is of a status of someone who could become a halala, or she could become a zona, she could become someone disqualified from kumuna, all the more so she should get disqualified, she should become a halala. So that's the logic that would teach us that she becomes a halala. Now the Gemara says, V'im nafshach lomar. Now if you'll have a question on that, an additional refutation, which doesn't tell us what that is yet, it says, but if you would question that, we have another proof. Amarkra, the pasuk says, Lo yichalel zaro, that he should not profane his offspring. But the language of Lo yichalel, the Gemara says, has an implication he should not profane something that's currently not profaned. So, Lo yichulal zeh shaya kasher v'nischalal. That it seems to be referencing someone who's a kasher and then becomes halal. Now that can't be the children, because the children would be born halalim. They're not desecrated, they're not profaned. The desecrated profaned implies it was good, it was pure, and then it became desecrated and profaned. Yes, they're going to have the status of halalim, but the language of Lo Yichalal implies there's somebody who's getting halal, who's getting profaned, who was at first kosher, at first pure. So who's that? So that must be the woman involved in this relationship. Okay, so that's a separate proof from a pasuk that the woman becomes a halala. Now, the Gemara then goes back to that point from before. Ma'im nafshach omer. What was the question? He's like, if you have a question, then I'll give you another answer, another proof. What was the question on our kavachomer? Our kavachomer was if the children didn't do anything wrong and yet they become halalim, so the mother who was involved in this avera, all the more so she should become a halala. So he said, but if you have a question on that, I have a pasuk to back me up anyways. What's the question that you might have? Says the Gemara, v'chitema, because you might say, that you can refute that kavachomer by saying, ma lizaro sheken yitziraso ba'avera. The offspring was born through an avera. They were born through a transgression. So maybe specifically they who were born through a transgression, through a forbidden relationship, they become halalim. So, but the mother wasn't born from an illicit relationship. She doesn't become a halal. That's why I might have said you can't make a kal b'chomer. So that's why Amar Kra, so I still have the pasuk. Lo yichalel, he shall not profane, which implies lo yichulo zeh shaya kasher v'nischal, that you shouldn't profane one who's currently kosher and then becomes profaned. That would be the mother. That's a proof that the mother becomes profane, becomes a halala. Okay. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ezo hi halala. What is halala? What produces a halala? Says the Gemara, Kol shenolda min psulim. Anyone who's born from psulim. Anyone who's born from psulim, from disqualified situations. Okay, the Gemara says, my psulim. What do we mean by psulim here? Ilema psulim lo. If we mean anyone born from a scenario where it was forbidden for the man to marry them, is automatically a halala. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Hare machzir grushaso. A machzir grushaso, someone who remarries his divorcee, dipsualo, which is forbidden in certain situations, we'll get to in a second, ubanek sherim, but yet the children are kosher. So if a man divorces a woman, so if he's a Kohen, he can't marry her again. He can't remarry her. A Kohen can't marry a divorced woman. A non-Kohen is allowed to marry a divorced woman. So if a man gets divorced, he's allowed to remarry his wife, so long as she hasn't married anyone in between. The halacha is that once she marries another man in between, even if she gets divorced or widowed from that second man, she's not allowed to go back to the first man. That's the halacha midoraisa by Torah law. So it's forbidden for a man to remarry his divorced wife if she's been married in between. But so she's a psulola. She's puzzled to him. She's forbidden to him. But yet we know banei aksherim. If they would get married and they would have children, the children would be kosher still. They wouldn't be mamzerim. They wouldn't be halalim. They're kosher children. How do I know? Tichsev, because the pasuk says toevahi, that it's an abomination to do that. He toeva ve'en banei toeva, but we can deduce she's an abomination. She's an abomination, but the children are not abominations. Meaning there's nothing puzzle in the children, so that does not actually disqualify the children. So when we asked what makes a halal, and we said anyone born from psulim, we can't mean anyone born from an illicit relationship because we have a forbidden relationship here that it's puzzle for this man to marry her. She's puzzled to him, she's forbidden to him, and the children are kosher. So that can't be what it is. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Hachi ka'amar. This is what it's saying. Ezohi halala. What makes a halala? Kol shenolda min psul kehuna. anyone who's born from a psul kahuna, from someone who's disqualified from marrying a Kohen. So, if a Kohen marries a widow, a Kohen Gadol marries a widow. If a Kohen marries a grusha, divorcee, or a Kohen marries a chalala, or a Kohen marries a zona, someone who had previously illicit relations. So all those cases, the children are halalim. That's what makes a halal. The Gemara says, nolda in, lo nolda lo. The only type of halal is if you're born from such a relationship. But if you're not born from such a relationship, you're not a halala. Hare almano grusha zona de lo nolda v'kavya halala. But what about the women themselves? When they marry this Kohen, they also become a halala. If an almana marries a Kohen Gadol, a widow marries a Kohen Gadol, she becomes a halala. If a divorcee marries a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol, or a zona marries one, they become halalim. So it's not only if you're born from an illicit relationship, there's other ways too. So our statement still needs sharpening. Our statement right now is, what's a halala? What makes a halala? Anyone who's born from a psul kahuna, a relationship that was forbidden to a Kohen. But that's not the only scenario. There's also the woman who is the woman of the illicit relationship. So Amar Rabba, Rabba says, Hachi Kamar. This is what we're really trying to say. Ezo halala muzkeres shalohaya la shas hakosher klal. Our real question was, what is the case of a halala that's muzkeres? The Gemara is going to ask what we mean by muzkeres, mentioned, who never had a shasa kosher, was never pure, was born basically as a halala. That's kol shenolda min psul kahuna. Anyone who was born from a psul kahuna. Anyone who was born from a forbidden relationship of a Kohen. So my muzkeres, what are we asking? What do we mean? What is a halala muzkeres? What's a mentioned halala? So what we mean is, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Aben Hachi Kamar. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Aben says, this is what we're saying. Ezoi halala sheikara midivrei Torah. What is the case of a halala whose basis is explicit in the Torah? Explicit, ve'ein tzrichun lefarish midivrei sofrim. It doesn't need rabbinic interpretation to bring it out. In other words, what we were asking, and there's certain halachic differences. They both are de'oraisa by Torah law, but there's certain halachic differences between something that's explicit and something that's deduced. So the Torah never explicitly says that the almana, the widow who marries the Kohen Gadol, or the grusha who marries the Kohen, becomes a halala. That's not explicit. It's true on a Torah level, but it's not explicit. So our question was, what is the case that's explicit? What is explicit in the Torah? That what halala is explicit in the Torah and doesn't need rabbinic interpretation? That's kol shenolda min psul kahuna. That's anyone born from one of these disqualified marriages. That was the pasuk we read before. That v'lo yechalel zaro, he shouldn't profane the offspring through any of these marriages. That's what we were looking for to define what are the explicit cases, and that is any child born, male or female, from a psul kahuna, from a relationship that a Kohen has with someone that's forbidden to him. So anyone born to that is a halal, and that is all considered explicit. And like I said, there's certain differences in halacha if something is, kind of certain niche cases, but if something is explicit in the Torah, or something is deduced, inferred, but not explicit. Okay, we're going to hold there and pick up from this next brisa next time. Mirz Hashem.